Okay, great. I think we're all good. Excellent. Okay, so hi everybody. Good morning. Thank you for joining us on our first advisor workday for the fall reporting season. We'll get going here. If you haven't already, please register through the link shared in the chat and rename yourself in the Zoom meeting so we know which sys vendor you are with. So some introductions, just generally speaking, of who and what and where and when and why. The NDE Help Desk, we have Jenny Carter, Denise Schuyler, and Naomi Colas helping at the workdays. Our ESU Zoom support are Melissa Engel and Craig Hicks. Thank you guys so much for helping us. We will have Power School Consortium support from Nebraska Power School and the ESU 10 folks. Some of our workdays will have Infinite Campus, JMC, Synergy, Nebsys, and SRS support as well. So it's very helpful to have all of our vendors helping us out. Our plan for the day and kind of our agenda is we'll have our presentation. We'll talk about mostly advisor follow-up and fall collections, and then we'll have a possible SRS presentation, and then possibly the vendors will be doing some updates as well. But the majority of the time today we want to spend working on your data. We want to help answer any questions you have and kind of talk through situations, errors specific to your school system. We will have a formal lunch break from 12 to 1 p.m. So it'll be a nice time to break away from your computer and step away and get a nice solid break in. And then we will finish up our day at 3 o'clock. So the agenda for our presentation, we're going to just kind of comb through some quick reminders about various collections within the portal that are updated every fall. So advisor person ID, staff reporting, CDC. But the majority of the time today, we're going to spend talking about advisor validation. So we'll talk about the 2021 follow-up collection, and then we'll also mostly dig into 21-22 fall. We'll talk about what's new, what was removed, and any data elements that have changed since last year. And then we have a whole slew of resources to share with you. So reminders, we have this wonderful calendar, and every hyperlink here in the presentation will open up a website and hyperlinks directly to the source. So we'll be sure, if you don't already have a PDF copy of this presentation, let us know and we can get it sent to you. But we want to, yes. We want to be sure that you can utilize the resources that we talk about in the presentation. So this is our calendar for 21-22. The first section of it talks about staff reporting. So what's great is it talks about all the various due dates we have throughout the year, mentions the data that's collected, and then what's really helpful, it goes through why and how the data is used and why it's collected. So the first part of the calendar talks about staff reporting. We have some assessment roster dates. Those are TBD right now, but they will be coming soon here. So I'll have a revised calendar coming out. We talk a little bit about advisor person ID, and then we get into the advisor validation collection timeframes. So what we're going to focus on today is our 2021 follow-up collection. The due dates here, so it was due on the 15th, but we are currently in the audit window, and there's a lot going on right now in that window. This is the data that we're collecting in the collection, and we'll get into this later, and then the uses for it. So the same can be said for a section talking about 21-22 fall. And then later on, which we won't talk about too much today, is the 21-22 year end. So this calendar, we do have various versions of it. Right now, we're still on version 1, but this is going to be a really great resource for you throughout the school year.
Naomi, I'm sorry to interrupt. If you were sharing the calendar, I don't think we were seeing it. I wasn't seeing it.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, I'm glad you said something. Let's go back and see if I share a different way. All right, now can you see it? Okay.
Yep.
So I'll go faster through it since I kind of fell through it already and you weren't seeing. So the first part is the staff reporting. And the sections here are the due dates, the type of data submitted, and then what the use is for. So there's sections for staff reporting, assessment roster, which is coming soon, advisor person ID. There's our 2021 follow-up. And there's our 21-22 fall. And lastly, our year-end data. So the version you can find in the upper right-hand corner here. And this will be updated throughout the year. But anytime we update it, we'll send a bulletin announcement. So be sure you're registered for those. Thank you, Denise, for letting me know that. If there's anything else, just go ahead and interrupt me. Get right in there, girl. So the calendar, and the reason we start talking about that right away is because it's important to know that due dates are due dates. And those are really important to us because the data it starts to get used after our audit window closes. So the due date happens, and then the program owners of various collections here at NDE start taking a look at the data. They start analyzing it and they start seeing things. They'll contact the districts. They'll say, hey, can you take a look at your free and reduced numbers? They're not quite looking right. And then that audit window closes, and then we need to start using the data and sharing it with other resources. Sometimes it's various federal programs. It can be used for statewide stuff, but we start utilizing that data. So when we say due dates are due dates, it's really important because we can't make updates necessarily to the data after the date because we start using it. So there's a lot of nuances there that we can get into. I'm not going to, but I just think that it's important to know that's why we have those due dates there. And I do also think the why is really helpful. So why we have those due dates is included in that calendar information. And if you ever have a question as to why something's due or why that due date exists, please send in a ticket to the help desk. We're happy to help explain some of that information. So one of the collections that's important to review every fall is your advisor person ID. And this is because every fall we want you to update your student body records. So that's every student update their information in the person ID collection. There is a change this year over last where we are no longer accepting the legacy file version because we needed to add 2 new optional fields, preferred first and preferred last name. So with the addition of these 2 new fields, we had to come up with a new template in which to upload your advisor person ID files. So that's why we're no longer accepting the legacy file. And then the other important reason for updating this in the fall is because the first name, last name, and date of birth is what populates advisor validation. So you may have in your SIS student information system the student ID number, and you send that into advisor validation, but the first name, last name, and date of birth aren't coming from your student information system. They're actually coming from advisor person ID. So it's important that that information is correct in that collection because that's what's populating advisor validation. Staff reporting, we did have a couple work days on this. Staff reporting, I'll click through this link here so you can see. This is the manual that's for staff reporting, and you'll notice there's various years here, but for 21-22, this guidance is really helpful if you have specific questions about any of the various data fields that we collect. But staff reporting, there's 3 collections related to this type of data. Staff reporting itself, 21-22, this is a new collection that needs to be added to your portal account every year. The NDE staff ID collection can be helpful when you're reporting this data. And then really helpful is the NSSRS validation collection, where you can view errors related to your staff reporting data and view reports so that you can see an overall picture of what you reported in staff reporting. So another useful tool, but not necessarily a collection, is our public certification lookup site. And hopefully that comes up here soon, where you can type in a first name, last name, and do a little quick search on any of your staff members who are certified or previously certified. You can find their NDE staff ID number here, or you can focus in and go to the details within their certification. It tells you what type of certificate they have, issue date, expiration date, the status of it. Some really helpful information there. So we do have a fall deadline coming up. We had our statutory deadline on 9/15. Now we have a fall deadline coming up on 10/15. And then we have our audit window close on 10/31. And in November, we will take the information collected during that period and we will publish the information to our education directory. This is a web page that's available to the public where they can pull various data points for not only your school district, but also for your staff. So that's why one of the reasons that it's important to get your information, especially like email addresses, subject areas, things like that, updated by the fall deadline. All right, so then last but not least, consolidated data collections. We have lots of them that are due October 15th, and we have a link here for our consolidated data calendar. And this lists everything that's specific to public school districts at the beginning, when it's open and when it's due. There's later sections for other types of schools, non-public, special purpose, Rule 18. If you fall within those categories. But the big ones here for publics are listed. I won't read through these, but these are the ones that are due October 15th with an audit window close date of October 31st. Now, there is another one that's opening up here, if not already, Title I annual caseload count that's not due until December. And then there's another one that's actually open all year long that opened earlier, substitute teachers. And this year we have new due dates for it to help with accreditation and certification. So the first due date is going to be December 15th. And then the second is June 15th. So if you can kind of see it, it's basically semester. You're kind of collecting semester data. And so the first collection is going to collect your total days worked per each substitute. And again, this is in the CDC. And so we want to have that information in by December 15th, and then we'll do a little audit and we'll close that a month later in January. Then we'll remove any submit approve that you've done. We'll keep the days worked already in there, but we'll reopen it again in March, and you can add the rest of that substitute's days worked. So it's kind of, we're breaking it into two collection periods. And the reason we did this is so that the accreditation specialists and certification teams can utilize the data earlier than the very end of the year. This helps with making sure that substitutes are working only a certain number of days per school. It actually really helps with when substitutes go in to renew their certificates, and there's already days worked for this calendar year as well. So that can be helpful in their process. A couple other things. We open substitute teacher collection early on because we want to make sure that you guys have a tool to ensure that your substitutes are certified. So in addition to that public lookup, you can enter the substitute's NDE staff ID here, and it'll tell you whether or not they're okay to work. So that's a good thing. It also helps count the days worked within their certification record. So as I was mentioning, it can help with their renewal process. So it's really important as well to remove any substitutes who didn't work at your district. Basically, the substitute collection, substitute teacher collection, takes everything that was entered in last year as far as names and puts it into this year. So you'll have to add new substitutes that are starting at your district this year, and you'll have to remove anybody who's left. And again, here's a link to that certification lookup because it's another great helpful place you can go and look up their information. All right, so that's our ancillary sort of collection stuff. Now let's get into the nitty gritty of it, advisor. So we're focusing on two different advisor collections right now. One is the follow-up collection, and that's from last year. This opened July 1st, was due September 15th, and we are in the audit window period, which closes October 2nd. And the information that we're collecting right now is related to student and teacher course sections, updates specific to changes from last year. So maybe those kiddos who are doing credit recovery or something over the summer, any year-end enrollment updates. So this would be your dropouts that you find out and you have to update from last year, your summer transfers, and then also your special education summer transfers and exiters. This is when we'll get that information into advisor and report it. And then any changes to Title I data for the 2021 school year. So I think what's key is that at this point, the majority of the data for the 2021 school year is already in advisor, and you're just making updates to those ancillary pieces that weren't available to report by June. So a side note related to summer school, because sometimes we have these questions pop up. NTE does not currently collect summer school courses, sections, or student grade data. So we aren't necessarily needing that, but we are needing graduates, someone who graduated in June, any summer transfers, like I mentioned, your Title I, your special education program data, that is summer related data that we're collecting. But when it comes to specifically summer school, this person's taking a class only in the summer, that course section student grade data doesn't need to be reported. So let me see what this last one says here. If a student is taking a course for credit recovery, I kind of talked about that a little bit too. You're going to report that into the 2021 follow-up collection because that's related to that data. It's an update to that data set. And then the second advisor validation collection that we're going to focus on today is the 21-22 fall collection. So this data is due on October 15th with an audit window close date of October 31st. Specific data points that we're collecting include demographics, special education, school enrollment, early childhood, food programs, so your free reduced lunch, English learners, and digital equity data. So for 21-22, we are not going to have a COVID specific crisis event indicator for this school year. But if you do have questions related to COVID reporting, things related to any of that, continue to please use our Launch Nebraska website. This has got so much great information here. In fact, we have a lot of times, I know there's the commissioner comes out with announcements, and you can come here and you can see what some of that specific guidance is. I know. So this is for the 2021 school year, if you wanted to see what he came out with there. But we have the same thing for 21-22. Okay, so when you open your advisor validation collection, it's important to caveat that there's going to be 2 different school years that you're going to review, right? So you're going to look at 2020, 2021, and you're going to focus on your follow-up data for it. Then you're going to change the school year in the collection, and you're going to look at 21-22 to look at your fall data. So it's 2 totally different data sets, and each of those data sets has their own errors, has their own verification reports. So you're looking at 2 different data sets there. Some tools within the advisor validation collection that will help you look at your data and analyze it are enrollment lookup by ID, student lookup by ID. So let's go back. Enrollment lookup by ID is really helpful. And here's why. It shows you one student's data for their entire scholastic career at any district that's had them enrolled. So you can see if a kiddo was at 3 different districts over a 3-year period, and you can see all those enrollment records. The student lookup by ID is really helpful because it shows you one student's information for your school district for what's been reported for that school year. So you can really get into the nitty-gritty of one student. We utilize this one a lot when we're looking into errors and trying to figure out, okay, why am I seeing an error on this kiddo? First thing Denise and I are probably going to say is, let's go to a student lookup ID and see what's in advisor for this kiddo. And then there's a couple other ones, student lookup by demographics, special education lookup, some program specific lookups so that you can get into the specifics of those data sets as well. Then we have our verification reports. So this link, this will eventually be a hyperlink when we have this document ready for you guys. What it is a list of all the verification reports within advisor validation for both collections that you're going to want to review. Once you have your errors all fixed, once your days is in there, everything's good to go, then you're going to start looking at your reports. And so each of these reports, some of them have multiple reporting windows and some don't. But this link here will tell you which reporting window to view that report in. So let's say you pull up a report on special education and you have choices. Your one choice could be full year. And this would show you any students enrolled in your district at any time during the school year, even if they've already exited. So for a special education report, this may show you any kiddos who've had a special education record throughout the entire year, even if they've transferred to another school district midway through the year. Another reporting window to look at is as of today. So this can be really helpful when you're comparing your student information data to advisor. This is students who are enrolled in your district literally as of today. We've got as of October 1st. So this would be students enrolled in the membership count date or special education as of 10/1. So this is a helpful one because this is the data that we are going to lock on October. At the end of the month, and let me get to the next slide here, and then we'll have an as of October 1st locked report. So then you can look at the two reports and you can look at live data, the one that says as of October 1st, and then you can look at the as of October 1st locked and look at what was used for state accountability purposes. So this is the information that we're really focused on when we're looking at our fall collection data. So let me go back to the previous slide. A lot of the reports you're going to look at right now is your as of October 1st. So we turn on a lot of these reports pretty much right around that day so that we can start looking at that data. So on the 2nd of October, you're really going to want to focus in on those. A couple other reporting windows, end of year, which is available May 1st. And then this is the students who are enrolled at the end of the school year. And then we lock that data at the end of the year. So come around July 1st, we locked it. So when you're reviewing your reports for the follow-up collection, you're going to look at your locked data and what's in end of year, what we call live data, is going to overwrite what's in your locked reports. Now, this is not for every single report, but the very specific ones that we have on the document that we'll give you so that you can look at those. All right, so another side note for fall specific advisor reporting that's important to talk about is the graduation cohort data. So you'll want to review the errors specific to this data set. So an example is 439, and you'll look at those in the 21-22 school year. Now, you can also change your school year to 2021, and you can go use your GCAT tool. And this will show you all your 4th, 5th, 6th year, 7th year rosters for all your graduation cohorts. So each specific cohort. So you've got a 2020 cohort, a 2021 cohort, your 2019, and you can view all of those. It's just important to make sure that your school year within advisor validation says 2021. So you'll just want to review those reports, make sure everything is listed as it needs to be. And if you do need to edit any of this data, we have a tool in the CDC called the Graduation Cohort Resolution Request, where we can make updates to that data if it's necessary. All right, so once all of you've reviewed all your errors, you've fixed the ones you can, you've reviewed your reports, and it's end of October, or it's close to October 2nd, because we now have 2 collections that we're approving. And so you're going to go into advisor, your superintendent, and they're going to approve each of these collections. So on or around October 2nd, they're going to approve 2021 follow-up. And then on or around 10/31, they're going to go in and approve 21-22 fall. So it's important to wait until the end of that collection period, because there could be other school districts changing their data, which then impacts your data. So you want to make sure that the superintendent is approving that information as close to the end of the audit window as possible. And the approval that they do does not lock the data. The data is not locked until midnight or the next day of that reporting period. All right, so let's talk about specifically 21-22 advisor. Okay, we're not going to focus on follow-up anymore. We're going to focus on this school year, what's new in advisor. So we have a few new data elements. We've got some new exit withdraw types, some special education reason exited changes, attendance event categories, residency status. We have a new whole program, learning modality. We made some updates to the digital equity indicators, and then we also have this new assessment roster, which is called student staff cohort. So we'll talk through some of these. So for the exit withdraw types, we in the past used this 201 transfer out code. And now we have these new code values that are specific to where the student transferred out to. So no longer is it just a generic transfer out. You're going to say transferred out to a public school, special purpose, non-public. They went to homeschool or they went out of state. Those are new ones. And so the reason why these were added is because there were students who were kind of falling through the process, I guess. So especially related to some of our special purpose schools, some of our rural 18s. And once a kiddo was transferred out, it was kind of like, where are they? What are they doing? So it was important to start tracking some of these nuances and kind of dig into the data a little bit more. This doesn't change any of the other exit withdraw types. We still have our dropouts, 202s. We still have our completers, 210s. These all still exist with the same descriptions. We do have an update to some of the sped reason exited codes, only because the descriptions have been updated to match with the new. So here is an example, and this is a screenshot from our data elements guidance, which if we don't have it linked somewhere in here, we definitely need to do, because you'll hear Denise and Ginny and I refer to this guidance document all the time, because this is kind of what we refer to when we have questions. So the SPED 01 reason exited is transferred to another school district. Well, we needed to say, okay, specifically transferred out to a Nebraska public school district. So when you're using this SPED exit, it's going to have to align with this enrollment exit. And so there's just some nuances like that that are important to note. Okay, so another new data element is we have a new SPED reason exited, SPED 18, and this is parent or legal guardian revoked consent for special education services. So this kiddo was served in special education at the start of the school year at a certain period, and then at some point the parent or guardian revoked those services. So these kiddos don't have an IEP and they're receiving all their educational services from regular education. So this is a new exit code that we added. Okay, a new, the attendance event categories. This has been a highly discussed topic at past work days, and I suspect we'll have some questions about it too. We have some new kind of nuanced excused and unexcused absence codes. So what's important to note here, and this is a screenshot again from our data elements, we do not provide specific descriptions for each of these. And the reason we do that is because the district is defining these. So the district knows when they have an excused absence for illness or medical, what those nuances to that data are. So I think this is helpful for all of you within your student information systems. Whatever you had coded as an excused, this is regular last year, or unexcused code, you're going to remap those into these new codes. So that should help you with that. And a lot of questions about why we did this. There's some dashboard things that it can help with, but we really, I reached out to the AQuest team and to get more information on why. And the biggest why is for this continued clarification between true truancy, so those unexcused absences, and chronic absenteeism, all absences. And then they also provided a few other helpful hints here to provide support to stakeholders in better understanding trends in chronic absenteeism and the more intricate sort of nuanced reasons for these absences, and to create some opportunities to research these things and figure out how we can help with the districts with these situations. I did also, if you guys have further questions on this, we can certainly put you in touch with the AQuest team to talk through some of those things. But I think that this should help a little bit, along with the district is defining these codes. So it's really up to each of you to define what those mean to your school. Okay, we have one new residency status code, and that is an 09, ward of the state court assigned to a group home. This is very specific to students who have been placed by the state or courts in a group home located within the boundaries of a public school district, and they are enrolled in that school district. There are literally right now only 2 school districts who will be using this code, and they know who they are. But if you have questions around this code, or if you think this might apply to you, let us know. Please send us a ticket. And then this is the big one I was mentioning that's brand new this year. So we have this learning modality, we'll call it a program just for the ease of understanding it. Any students who are in remote learning for at least part of their instruction in the school year are going to need a learning modality record. So think of it as the exceptions, not the rule. So the assumption is kiddos who are full-time in person all the time, they're never going to need this program record. So what you're going to do in your student information system is you're going to create this program. So there's 2 different types of learning modalities. There's remote or in person. you're gonna have this, these are each data elements. So this learning modality type is one, modality time type, and modality time. So then you're gonna define the time type. So it could be in percent. This is what we would prefer, but you could also do it in minutes, days, and then your modality time in decimal form. So the total time. Let's get into some examples of this. I think this is where you really start to see how it works. So you could name the program whatever you guys want. So you could name it virtual school. The type is going to be remote, and the time type is percent. And you could say this group of students, anybody marked with this program type here, this virtual school, is at 100% remote education. Now, another example is, this could be another group of kiddos. You call it high school hybrid 2/3. And it's going to have two different modality types. You're going to have some in person. It's going to be 40%. And you're going to have some remote. That's going to be 60%. So for kiddos who have this program record on their advisor file, they're 40% in person and 60% remote. So it's really up to you guys to define each of these based on what you're offering. Students will then be assigned to those specific programs, and it'll be important to have a begin date because we need to know when that started. And then you're going to need an end date only if the kiddo is changing their type of program. So in these examples, you could say someone was here, you have a start date here, and you need to end date this because they ended up moving into a hybrid situation. And then the other thing that we'll be checking against is the enrollment dates. So the dates of this program, this learning modality, will need to match the enrollment dates reported in advisor for the kiddo. All right, so then we get into digital equity. So this has become a permanent part of the fall collection. I will have you heard me mention the digital equity when I talked about fall reporting. So there's this really helpful sort of chart, I'll link here, that shows you all the various data elements. It's kind of small. So we'll just look at one example here. So the element itself is primary learning device away from school, and we give you a definition with your various options. But what's helpful is it gives you a suggested question that you can ask in your surveys. What device does the student most often use to complete learning activities away from school? So this chart is really nice because it gives you what the data element is, and then a possible question, and then your options for answers here. The information that we're collecting here is going to help with funding to support the digital equity programs. And there's actually been some mapping for this information superhighway, and I don't know a lot about it right now, that's been provided to the ESU's districts that the information is being used for. All right, so then the other new sort of program to think about is the student staff cohort. And I use assessment rostering to wrap my brain around it, because this cohort, so it's not graduation cohort, it's like an assessment cohort, right? So I use assessment rostering to wrap my head around the student staff cohort. So basically what it is districts can choose to roster their NWEA map data through Advisor, our database, the ODS. And this would replace the need for districts to load files into NWEA. So this assessment rostering, the student staff cohort, is utilized in that process. So these will allow staff who aren't necessarily already associated or connected to these students through Advisor in courses and sections to see the NWEA portal. So some examples of that here on this next slide here, I think. Nope. Some examples, I'll just tell you. What I've heard: coaches, guidance counselors, staff members who wouldn't necessarily have a course connection with this student would be people that need to see the assessment data for this kiddo. So what you'll do and how it gets sent into Advisor is you create the unique cohort. So you're going to add the staff member, Coach Smith, and then you're going to add the 3 students that Coach Smith needs to see. So you're creating a cohort specific to this group of student staff. And then each grouping or each cohort needs its own sort of cohort, its own grouping. So you don't need to create these for principals, superintendents, and you don't need to create these for teachers because you're already tying that through course data. It's anything kind of ancillary or outside of that. And then eventually the data will flow to NWEA on a nightly basis. I know they're still working on that. That's why there's this more information to come. All right, and then last but not least, we did remove a couple elements. The calendar events 10 and 11 that we added last year specific to instructional day, they were removed because we have our new learning modality program. So these weren't needed anymore. All right, and then according to all this new information that I've shared, there are some new verification reports to review once you've gone through your errors and stuff like that. So they're specific to digital equity. So on this slide here, it's the report category. And then this is where in the listing of all the reports, the header, you can find these things. So there's digital equity, there's learning modalities, student staff cohort, there's a SPED post-school outcomes because we're transitioning that into advisor from it being an ancillary collection outside of. There's course history, CRDC, and then this is a really new and helpful one, I think, and it's student enrolled in a special purpose school. All right, so we've got course codes for 21-22. They're now available on a website. Here we go, where you can sort by subject. You can change the school year. You can search for a code that you know was previously used. And then at the top of the page here is our menu. So there's changes. So if you need to see specific changes year over year, this is a great one here. We do have a PDF of this information available. We're working on finding a place to post that online. So let us know if that's something that you need. And final notes. So help desk, I've mentioned it a couple times. This is your question field. Send us an email, advisorhelp@nebraskacloud.org, and this will auto generate a ticket in our JITBIT ticketing system. And the help desk will go through our tickets. We typically try to answer them in the order they're received. We've been very, very busy the past couple of weeks, so we appreciate your patience. It's taken us a while to get back to some of you. But when you create that ticket, it goes in this queue, and then we go through the queue and we take them and answer them and do our best to support you. If the question and you want to show us screenshots of, let's say, your student information system, it's probably likely that you're going to want to go to your SIS vendor first to see if it's something they can answer. But if the question is very specific to anything NDE related, the portal, advisor, person ID, let us know. We are happy to help. And then we have a whole bunch more resources here. I did mention that we needed to have a link to data elements because that's something that we look at a lot. And I think you can find that here on our advisor resources page. So on this page, you can see certification status for all the SIS vendors. That calendar that we talked about is located right here. We've got this advisor data guidance, and this is where you can find the data elements. So kind of our dictionary of all things advisor. There's the who reports what document, which is crazy helpful for if you have a unique student reporting situation that you're not quite sure what to do with it. And then we even have a new document, systems involved student reporting, that really breaks out those specific situations even further. That's really helpful as well. So it's important to kind of visit this page and look at the resources there. We do still have our Google site. We're trying to move away from utilizing it. So I would focus on here. And then I would also truly focus on the bulletin and making sure that you're registered to receive notifications here. You can subscribe up here with the envelope icon. We display all of the bulletin announcements here. If you're specific to a certain type of school, you can display them that way. So you can view only things for public school districts. However you need to view it. So in public, and I focused on staff, I want to look at only things listing that, but then you have to view the website to view our announcements. So I just think it's really important to get registered for that if you aren't already. And then we do have our monthly data webinars as well. So this actual presentation here is going to go into our October listing. We do have on-demand videos from previous sessions. It's the second Wednesday from every month from 9:30 to 11:30, generally speaking. This next one is so close to a due date that we won't be doing anything too long, and it'll mostly just be Max's advisor monthly update from 9:30 to 10. But you do need to register. It's free. So you can go to this website here. Maybe, hopefully, and you can register at the website. And that's also where you can find the on-demand videos. So since that link's not working, we're just going to see if we can keep going. All right, here it is. So you can register for October. So this would be registering for Max. And then you can scroll down here, and last month, September, you can see the video recording for the presentations we made. You can also find the PDF files of the presentations themselves. So this can be really helpful as well to refer back to these. All right, and last but not least, at the end of our work days, in the next couple of weeks, we'll send out a survey. Please keep an eye out for those. We love your feedback. It helps us cater these to make sure that we're adequately supporting the questions and the needs that you guys have. We'll ask for data steward confirmation. So if you have new contact information, or there's a new data steward that's going to be supporting you next year, or if you have any sys vendor changes, this is the place to do that. So for the rest of today, what time are we at here? 9:45. We'll potentially have an SRS presentation if Min from the SRS team is available. We'll potentially have a sys vendor presentation. I don't know if we're going to have one today, but we're definitely going to have lunch from 12 to 1. So take a break, step away from your computer, and then until 3 o'clock, we'll have work time where it'll just be kind of we'll use breakout rooms if we need to. We'll ask questions in the main room, so you can hear some of those. So that's it. And I know a lot of questions have probably come in while I've been talking. So let's.
Sorry.
Stop recording right here.
Okay, thanks, Melissa.